Or driven the ship. Oh,
You're
are we live?
driving right now. Yeah.
I'll put
Hello!
my seatbelt on.
Excellent. Yeah, gonna buckle up for this one. Howdy, everybody. Welcome to the Esports EDU chat. We're happy to join you here tonight. Our topic for the night is burnout in esports. So before we get to the topic, we'll go ahead with introductions. Let's start over here with.
Hey everybody, I'm Carrie. I'm the Chalk Mojo on Twitter. I'm the communication specialist for Snowbright Studios.
Excellent. And then below.
My name is Angelique Giannis. I am a high school English teacher. I'm also a NASEF NASEF community leader, and I run our esports and casual gaming club at my school.
Excellent. Perfect. And I am AJ. I am currently the director of membership sales and services for NACE. I also am serving as the vice chair for the Kansas City Esports Coalition at this point. So, burnout in esports. It's very funny because before we went live, we were sitting here discussing about, we're all feeling this particular topic tonight. I think it's especially for us, it's one that's pretty near and dear to our hearts. So we did post 2 questions on Twitter today, so we definitely want to make sure that we address those throughout our session tonight. But also, if anybody has, if you're watching, anybody in the chat, if anybody has any thoughts, ideas, suggestions, questions, be sure to throw them in, and we'll definitely make it a part of our conversation. So the first question that we posed on Twitter was, what creates an environment that enables burnout?
People expecting like one person to do everything. I think that as esports educators and teachers and people who have gotten into esports, especially the educators who are starting these programs at their schools, you don't have a lot of buy-in from your admin, your tech office, and parents, and any of that community sports or community support like traditional sports do. So you're often left alone to kind of build it by yourself and figure it out by yourself. And that's going to lead to burnout because often this isn't our only job, right? Like I run my esports program at my school, but I'm getting paid to be an English teacher. I don't get paid to run the esports program, and my time is limited. So you're working hard at teaching and you're burnt out on teaching, and then you have this other thing that you're passionate about, but you kind of feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders sometimes because you have so many kids who want to do so many things, but you can only do so much by yourself.
Yeah, I think the culture of like the esports community of that esports never sleeps. I think that's a huge failing that sets everybody up for burnout. You add that on top of the teacher rhetoric that is like you're not really a good teacher unless you give 150% to your students. Like that already sort of kind of martyrdom culture that goes along with teaching that really promotes burnout and puts those teachers who extend themselves too far sort of up on a pedestal. And then I think when AJ and I were talking a couple months back about like scope, most organizations don't plan for the future of their esports programs. So, if you're that one person who's putting all this extra time beyond your teaching hours into getting your program started, like that's great at first when you're just getting started and it's only you and you have the passion for it. But you have to understand that passion is going to die out at some point in time if it's not being like fed. If it's just taking from you, it's just taking from you, and eventually you're going to be depleted. So if you don't have that sort of that scope and you're not planning for growth and how you're going to remove some of that responsibility and put it on other people, you're asking for burnout. And I think a lot of programs at all levels fail at scoping their programs and making sure they're designed for longevity and health.
Yeah, for me, like creating an environment that enables burnout, I think probably one of the biggest ticket items that I can really kind of speak to is just the ability for just there to be support, right? It's the ability for the institutions that you're working at or working with or working for, the ability for them to just show support. And when we say so support, we're not like, oh hey, like they stopped by the arena to pop in and like see what we were doing. It's support in the ability to get additional equipment that's necessary, the support for additional staffing for the program when you're, up to 40, 50, 60 kids and you've still got the one staff member that's in charge. So not having the tangible support from the institution, I think is a key factor here.
Yeah. And I think we as a esports culture need to watch what we put out there on our social media. I think we all have seen so many posts of people that are like, just pulled a 18-hour day. We're working on 20 hours. I'm going to get that 4 hours before I'm in early. Or, just finished, the Rocket League thing. And now I'm off to go do this. And it's like 10:45 at night and they're East Coast, like we glorified this and you see so many people posting about it, and I get it, like it's something you're doing and you want to talk about it, but when that becomes sort of like the norm and people see that, it feeds into that expectation that, one, esports and gaming is 24/7, and two, that teachers and people in the scholastic industry are 24/7 because it's for the kids. Like we've created this machine that consumes educators, and that's not, it's not maintainable.
Yeah, it's like, and I saw Nick saying that in chat. Like, he said, unpaid labor, and extended hours are easily glossed over when you can say, but do it for the kids. And I think like that's where the overlap is as teachers. I hear from my coworkers like, well, this is what you signed up for. Like, this is part of the job. And I'm like, I literally heard that this week. And I was like, that's not what I signed up for. Like, I signed up to inspire kids and teach them English and engage them and make them fall in love with reading and stories. I didn't sign up to work until 10 p.m. I didn't sign up to work for free. Like, who would do that? And who would not fight back? And I think like recently, as a culture, as an institute, teachers have began to fight back against that. Like, well, I'm not going to work outside my contract hours. I'm going to do what I can. But then you have that guilt of like, but I'm not doing enough and all those things. And when you get involved in scholastic esports, you are an educator. You're involved in education in some way. So you're kind of used to working for free or working outside your contract hours because you're doing it for the love of your students. And I know for me, and I know for a lot of us, if I was not the one running our esports program, nobody would. Nobody would be doing it. So you're kind of stick yourself in a hard place where you're like, well, either this isn't here or I'm doing it on my own time. And I think like over time that creates, a sense of, I don't know the word, like not anger, but,
resentment,
animosity, resentment, right? Where you're like, well, at what point are they going to notice these great things that I'm doing in this program that I've created, and they're going to acknowledge me for it in a tangible way, like AJ said, like not just the thanks for all you do for our kids. Like we're so lucky to have you, which we appreciate. Like I appreciate that acknowledgement and the visits and the pop-ins and the support. But if you're not supporting me by funding my program, or you're not supporting me by, paying me for my time, then what you're doing and what you're saying are two different things. So
and it's also, I think, rough because it sets an example that is then expected to be followed by other people. Well, this person does that, like, well, great. And you see that now, I think, in scholastic esports, is how many people spend many hours of their day after they're done teaching, working their esports programs, and it's expected that you're not getting paid. There were posts like this whole, was it like last week or early this week, about how are people out here like getting paid to teach esports? Like it's sad, but a lot of people are out here, working in the space, and they're not getting paid for that work. And I think you see turnover a lot when that happens, because it's great when you're there and you're passionate about it, but again, like you said, that resentment, is at a certain point, you want to see your family, you want to see your friends, you need to just take care of yourself mentally and physically. And if that's not coming in, we've seen a lot of people, I think, just in the last couple of years, especially during COVID, start to leave the scholastic space. They can still get jobs, they can still stay in esports, but now they're living much more comfortable lives because they're working contracted hours and they're making a good $20,000 to $30,000 a year more by not being in the education system.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point. What we're doing and the things that we put out there into the Twitter sphere really helps kind of cultivate the esports never sleeps culture. And I think my biggest fear, one of the biggest fears that I had, was if my students, when I was a collegiate coach, if my students saw how run down I was at the end of the day. They if they really understood all of the hours that I was putting in and all of like the mental stress and anxiety and everything that came along with being overworked and being burnt out, I was afraid that if that was something that I preached about on Twitter, they would see it and it would deter them from wanting, because I had quite a handful of them that were like, I want to do what you do. I want to get into esports. And my fear was, if we continue the, oh man, I just worked for 12 hours, I can't wait to do it all again tomorrow. It's just not something that, while we should talk about it and learn from it, it's not something that we should be putting out there for everyone to see, all of the very impressionable students to see, because they're like, if that's what it takes, then I'm gonna have to do that, and that's not what I want for.
No, but I think we need to talk about it, because I think it's something that needs to change in the industry. Like, if you're looking at how many programs have health and wellness built into their curriculum and their program design. So they're talking about making sure that you're taking breaks and that you're resting, and we're talking about eye health, and we're talking about ergonomics and the importance of stepping back and balancing your computer time versus your physical health, working out and eating well, and maintaining your relationships. And yet we aren't doing that, and I think that's a really unhealthy break. When we talk about teaching, a lot of it is modeling. It doesn't take much for students to see, okay, well, they're saying we need to do this, but really clearly I can see that they're doing this. Esports educators are in the thick of the grind, and if we're trying to tell our students that the grind isn't healthy, then we surely shouldn't be demonstrating that this is how we live our lives. The grind should be something that we are trying to eliminate from scholastic esports in all aspects of it. Finding that healthy balance, respecting people's personal times and their health. If we can't model that, how do we expect any of this that we're trying to teach the kids to actually resonate? Because they can clearly see that it's not being practiced by the adults.
Yeah, I think I'm very transparent with my students, both in my classroom and my students in my gaming club, and they see how much we work. They see that I'm there at 7 a.m, and then on club days, I'm there till 7 p.m, and they are too as a student. But I think it's important to be transparent with kids, because if they do go in the field, they are the ones that are going to advocate for that change. And a lot of students, when I tell them oh, I do get paid, but I only get paid for the 2 hours that I'm with you. I don't get paid to plan the tournaments. I don't get paid for the lunch meetings we have. I don't get paid for, all these other things that I do on my own time. They're just baffled. They're like, what do you mean? What do you mean you don't get paid? And I think it's a good thing to talk to them about those things, because teenagers now are incredibly talented at advocating for what they
Yes.
believe in.
Yep.
In very many ways. And like those kids are the first, like I had a kid a couple of years ago that emailed my executive director and said, Miss Giannis is doing all these wonderful things and you guys should be paying her more. And I was like, what? Like, oh my gosh. But I think, you know, I have a student who's my TA currently, and she wants to be a teacher. And so I am very transparent with her about what teaching is like and all of the things that you have to do behind the scenes as a teacher. And today, for example, I had a meeting that I was supposed to be at while I was teaching. And then there was no sub for me. So they called me and they're like, we need you at this meeting. And I said, awesome. I have 35 kids in my classroom, so I'm not really sure how you want that to happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was going back and forth and my TA is listening and she's like, Miss Giannis, how can you be at two places at once? And I'm like, sometimes as a teacher, that's like what people expect you to do. Like, you need to be in this meeting, you need to be reading your email, answering your phone, and blowing these kids' minds with the most engaging lesson you've ever given. And I'm like, what? So I think by involving the kids, it just makes it more realistic for them. Like, that is what you're getting into. And here are the issues that we need to change. And you guys and us are the ones to change it. So.
Yeah, I like this comment on Twitch chat from the Missing Ward. Discord being a 24-hour communication tool leads to burnout. Since I have become this position within NACE, I think one of my most interesting incoming messages that I've had, I got messaged by someone who had kind of a philosophical question, like, hey, like what is this about? Why does this exist? I got that message sent to me at 11 o'clock on a weekday. And I shouldn't have. I looked at it and I said, this isn't like, to be fair, nothing in esports at this point in time is life or death. So I told myself it's not life and death. I'm going to go ahead and disregard it. It's something that I'll get to in the morning during my normal working business hours. Come to find out, when I had woken up the next morning at 7 a.m. that morning, he had posed the same question into the NACE Discord server where everybody could like have the opportunity to answer the question. So between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., I did not get to him in enough time to address his concern before he took it into the public server. And that was kind of my driving force of really wanting to like talk about the topic of burnout and esports never sleeping. The inability for people to understand understand boundaries, and like maybe this question doesn't have to be something that I ask at 11 o'clock at night and like really expecting an answer. How do you with your guys, like with your students and things like that, with Discord and email and text being available to use at any point in your time,
I had students that were muted. And because everybody had access to me, and that's one thing I told like my admin, because of the way our program ran, and we were often off site. Kids had to have my cell phone number. Like, they had to have multiple ways to get a hold of me, because we were traveling frequently. Like, we'd be in multiple different cars. Parents are notorious for not bringing backup chargers and having their phone go dead 5 minutes into the start of the initial drive. Like, we'd had it all planned out. So, you know, we had sheets with everybody's numbers, and I set the ground rules. I'm like, hey, I know that this is probably the first teacher you've had this kind of access to. Here are the rules. If you blow up my phone at any point in time for any reason, you're getting blocked. That's it. There's no warning. Like, I do not want to have 167 cat photos at 1 o'clock in the morning, because they do this. Like, they do it. Like, I taught middle school. Like, somebody's gonna push the luck and just flame your phone. And so I told them, like, hey, if you abuse it, like it's gone. That's it. Your phone number is getting blocked and you can't access me through this. You know, we talked about tone and content. I talked about like my hours. Like if it's between these hours, I'm probably not going to answer. I might in certain situations, and I'll usually I would tell them if there was a window, like if we were approaching a grading window, I would say like, hey, you know, if I'm awake, I will respond to your calls, but all notifications turn off on my phone at a certain period of time and don't start up until a certain time in the morning. Like I have a dead zone programmed into my phone where if you're trying to get a hold of me, unless it's that kind of emergency trigger, my phone won't notify me. And I do that intentionally because I have the desire to do the same thing. Like I'm going to check and see, and then I'm going to get back to you because I can, I'm awake. But you shouldn't. Like, this is my time. It can wait until the morning. And then I followed through with it. And there were students who would, you know, they would text at 10:45 and you know, it's like, nope, that's it. Like I'm not going to see anything, or I'd mute them. You know, I'd be like, I'm not going to see anything you say. I'm going to actually have to check. So you might like not hear from me until you see me again. And then I did have kids that I blocked. Like they tried it. I got like 56 messages and they were all in Arabic. Like they had just got a whole new keyboard and just spammed stuff. And I was like, that's it. I blocked them. And the next day they're like, you didn't respond to me. I'm like, no, you're blocked. I got no idea what you're sending. And they were like, really? And I told you. Like,
yeah.
Can you unblock me? Nope. I told you there was no warning. This was the warning. You know, you take a misstep and that's done. And I think you gotta do that. Like you gotta set your own rules for yourself because it's hard. And like we all know the kids that need us to be there. Like we know the kids that are in situations where there's a probability that you're going to get a 911 call in the middle of the night and you are going to have to like get in a car and go do something or be on the phone because there's legitimate crisis happening in their lives. And in those cases, you're there because that is part of what we do. But, you know, for everybody else who's just, you know, I got a question about such and such. Great. It can wait until tomorrow. Like, we don't need to talk about the new DLC tonight.
Yeah.
We can talk about that tomorrow. But yeah, like setting limits on my phone has probably been one of the healthiest things I've done. Muting certain channels in Discord. Like if I don't moderate it, I don't have notifications on. It has been like it absolutely relieves my stress. If you don't at me, I don't know you're talking. If I don't mod the channel, I don't need to know. Like I can check on it when I check on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I really struggled with in my first year or two of teaching is setting those boundaries for communication because I felt like, oh my gosh, if AJ messaged me at 9 p.m. and AJ's actually doing her homework, like I want to respond to her because I want to, you know, make sure that she feels like validated that she's trying to do her homework. And I struggled with that a lot. My first and second year of teaching, I was responding to kids at 10 p.m. I was laying down to go to bed and checking my email and responding to the kid that had a question about an assignment that was due at 11:59. And that led to burnout. I just, you know, you feel like you have to be on all the time. And then I would have kids come to class and say, well, I emailed you.
Why didn't you?
And you didn't respond. And so I wasn't able to finish the homework. And I'd look and they emailed me at like 11:35 p.m. And I would be like, well, you know, why is that my fault? Right. And so one day I was just like, you know what, that's it. I need to set boundaries because it just gets crazy. And I think as a teacher, we need to teach our students how to live healthy lives. That's part of being a teacher, and work-life balance is so hard, especially now that we're online and you can be reached at any point in time in any way. So I have my times. They're like front and center highlighted on my Canvas page, our learning management system. It says, I will respond to emails between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. Please allow up to 24 hours for a response. It's the first thing they see. It's the first thing I highlight when I walk into class and I have a new class. And I tell them, like, listen, I want you guys to live your lives outside of school and the weekends, and I'm going to live my life outside of school and on the weekends. You guys don't bother me. I don't bother you. You don't want me to call you in the middle of a game and say, hey, I know you're playing varsity football right now, but you didn't turn in your essay. So can we have a meeting about that? Right. Then I think when you put it into perspective like that for kids, they're like, well, of course, Miss Giannis, like, you want me to call you at 1 a.m. and bother you about X, Y, and Z. And so that helps for sure. But it obviously isn't perfect. So what I do on top of that is if I have a student who emails me outside of those times, when I email them back, I say, here's your response. And then I say, just a reminder, I only respond to emails during this to this time. Just wanted to remind you. And they understand that, like, after you say it a couple times. And I do the same thing with like speaking opportunity emails and other stuff that I'm involved in. I'll get emails about speaking opportunities and, I'll respond a couple days later and they'll want to schedule a meeting with me the next day. And I'm like, that's not, like, I'm a teacher and I need my work-life balance. Like I can respond within this time and this is what's feasible for me. And I think a lot of it too is like education as a whole. That's what's expected of us, to be available to our kids at any time. And I think I see coworkers respond to emails until 10, 11 at night. And then my students have me and they're like, but my other teacher responds to me at 11. So I feel like it also has to be like a cultural shift for all of us, for the sake of our mental health, like for everyone's mental health and for the sake of teaching patients. Like, you don't need a response to your email 11:35 p.m. Like, let me sleep, please. Like, I don't know. I always say, like, I'm a human being first, and then I'm a teacher second. So,
yeah. So I want to shift a little bit of burnout. So we've kind of talked about kind of esports burnout for us at the staff level, but I think another key piece of burnout that we can also discuss would be something along the lines of like students and the students themselves also kind of burning out from what they are doing, right? So I know for us, when we're competing, esports doesn't sleep, so also that equates to esports doesn't have an off season. So there's the ability for students to be participating in esports in the fall semester, in the spring semester. Oh, but also we've got tournaments over the summer as well, if you're interested in participating over the summer. And I have had more than a handful of students that have came to me, and they're there for 2, 3, 4 semesters, and then they're like, you know what, I just can't anymore. I am burnt out.
yeah.
So let's kind of talk about that a little bit. What can you do? What can you say? How do you think that we can really sort of support our students and also help them from burning out as well?
Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, I think some of that is how you set up your programs. Like, we don't have to offer 4 quarters worth of competitive gaming. You can do, 2 to 3 seasons, and then you can completely take a summer off. Summer can be for something else completely. You can still have people meeting, but you're not competing. Maybe that's a time to look at game design, or it's a time to focus on social media, or it's a time to, do silly team bonding activities, like work on communication skills, or, marketing and working on portfolios. Like, there's so many other things that we could incorporate so that you're giving everybody a break. Like, when my son was competitive, sometimes I'd have to tell him, like, he would get into the state where, like, I could tell he didn't like the game. Like, just stop, because right now you hate the title that you're competing in. I can see it. I can feel it. I can feel it through the walls of the house. Like, step back, take some time, and just like remove yourself from it. Like when I was an Irish dancer, like you can practice and practice and practice and just struggle and struggle and struggle. And sometimes you had to take like 3 or 4 days and not touch a routine or any of the footwork and then come back. And it was so much easier to get after a 4 or 5 day break. Like, but if you didn't give yourself that break, you're never getting that fresh mindset or that rest that allowed you to come in with a fresh perspective or just new energy. So I think we need to start building in like breaks. You know, we're going to take this period and we're not going to play. Like we're going to do these other things, or we're just not meeting. And I think that needs to become more normal. And instead, I think right now everybody's just trying to cram as much into a year as they can.
Yeah.
We need to stop doing that. Like it's not healthy for the educators. It's not healthy for us. It's certainly not healthy for students. We know that esports athletes burn out of a couple of years. They either burn out or they injure themselves and they end up having to retire. So let's actively start doing something to change that.
I think, yeah, just incorporating breaks for everyone. I mean, I think it's part of in the classroom too. Like we need to take time to just play and have fun. And I mean, I saw it when I was running a League of Legends team. Like the same thing Carrie was saying, like the kids just complained about the game. Like they were just angry all the time. And I was like, why are you doing this? Like, I don't know. And just to like step back and take the competitiveness out of the game for a second and just like let them play to have fun and play something silly or a different game, or like you were saying, like time to community build and team bond, and all of those things are important. So I definitely I don't involve our teams in every season. I try and do one a year, like either spring or usually spring, because by that time I get to know the kids, and then so spring is what works best. And then I offer them the summer, like, hey, if you want to sign up for this summer league, for sure, like I'll help you sign up. But after that, like I'm on summer. So like if you want to do that just to have fun. But yeah, I don't think we need to do the whole year. Or if you are doing the whole year, different games, like focus on a couple games this term and a couple games this term, because as an educator, you're going to burn out because you're running it all year and your summer and your breaks and all of these things. Just showing our kids that like taking breaks is okay. Being bored is okay.
Having something outside of the one like thing you do is okay. Like, you know, as teachers, I know when I was in the classroom, it was hard because by the time you got home, I was exhausted. And then you think like, well, during the weekend, I'm going to do this. But, you know, Friday afternoon, if my partner so much as asked me what I wanted for dinner on Friday night, I couldn't. Like, I don't care. I don't want to make the decision. I've been making decisions for 34 people a day, 5 days a week. I don't pick something. Even if I'm eating lettuce and half the napkin, I will be happy that I didn't have to make the decision of where we were going to eat. Like, you know, so many of us end up at that point where we're done. But like, it's important to have those things that you love outside of the thing that takes up so much of your focus. And, you know, people are like, well, there's still students, you know, the academics, but like anytime you compete at something, it takes up a large amount of your time, energy, and processing power, because it's not like you're just playing, you know, a game. Like you're scrimming, you're going over VODs, you're doing, you know, game review, you're practicing. Like there's all this stuff that you're doing, you're scrimming. Like there's so much other stuff that goes into it that you've got to have something else. Like, you know, maybe we help our kids find other hobbies that they can you know, put that time and energy into, because if they're hyper focused on these one things, like it's not, you know, it's not healthy. We're all guilty of it. I think a lot of us are guilty of it. I work really hard now to make sure that I maintain hobbies outside of what I do for a living.
Well, I think it's also like a good idea to like level the playing field too. If you have a competitive team, maybe your break time is giving them something that none of them know anything about.
Yeah.
And watching them figure it out together. I feel like that's a great way to just kind of bring everyone back down for a second and experience like learning for the first time as a team. It shows you a lot about people. So yeah, I'm gonna do that with my students. Like, hey, we're all gonna crochet today. Good luck.
My kids really liked. I'd bring in books that you'd read in kindergarten. My middle school, so they would just lose it. Like, I ended up doing a whole unit on the Three Little Pigs because like everything's so academically focused. Even with the reading is so academically focused that for them to be able to sit down and have like something that connected to like childhood, it was hysterical. I did not expect it to be popular, but yeah, it was.
Our culture just supports go 24/7.
Yeah, playing is important. And competitive gaming, it's not the same as just playing. It's not. Like, we need to realize that they're two different animals. And if you're only doing one, you're not doing the other. Like, you need to still do the other.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. I love that idea of the books and like having it like that's so I love that. I think that's great.
They ate it up. It was hysterical.
What did we learn from this?
That's so great.
But like you can do the same thing with video games. Like, it's not that you can't. You can do something completely different. Like, I used to take games that I knew my students wouldn't like, and we played them and we broke them down and we talked about them. We talked about art design and level structure, and then we figured out who to pitch the game for. Like, there's so many different things we could be doing just to enjoy the game space and think about the game space. It doesn't always have to be competitive.
So my next question is something that I personally have in the past like really struggled with. When I'm feeling the burnout, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, when I'm feeling overworked, what do you guys think is the best way to try to throw up the smoke signal, to try to flag to your admins or to folks within your institution? What do you think could be some ideas for takeaways for people to at least broach that conversation with their administrator? Because it's not an easy conversation.
No.
It's really difficult to be vulnerable and go to your boss and be like, I'm having a hard time here. I'm really struggling. I, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, it's rough over here. So that conversation, how does that go? How do we try to get help for
I'm
ourselves?
Eating gummy bears for dinner. SOS.
Yeah. I mean,
that's how we help.
they made fun of me in the office the other day for my unhealthy breakfasts. Periodically I have cake for breakfast. I'm not kidding when I say I'm having a self-care breakfast.
Wow,
like,
you're living your best life.
Like, it's exactly what it is. It's like, I'm having a hard week. I'm struggling to get through it. We're gonna have chocolate cake and a cappuccino at 6 o'clock in the morning. We're good. This is what's going to get me through my morning, and I'm going to enjoy it. Like, I think the first step is recognizing early signs of burnout in yourself. And that can be really hard because I think, especially as educators, we swallow those.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to stop that. So we need to understand what are those early signs, so that we recognize them and we know we're getting into a point where we're not okay. We're starting to feel burnout. We need to identify our chocolate cakes. Like, we need to identify what those little things are. Like, you've got gummy bears. What are those things that make you happy? Like, they're a Band-Aid. Acknowledge that they're a Band-Aid, but know what they are so you can pull them out in a pinch. Like, if you need it, if it's, I'm getting a cappuccino this morning, or, I'm fried chicken. Yeah. Like, what are those things that you're like, okay, I know I shouldn't, but this is what's happening because this is what's needed right now. But being comfortable with being like, okay, I'm noticing these signs in myself. This means I'm in a state where I'm feeling burnout, and then knowing who you can go to and what you need. Like, I know for myself, I get really quiet on social media. If I'm burnout or I'm stressed, I really don't want that social like interaction like that. The introvert in me becomes really apparent, and I pull back. So being able to say like, hey, I would like to step back from, maybe there's certain responsibilities that you have, because a lot of people are, we've talked about Discord. Like a lot of people have to mod or they have to be accountable in Discord, even if it's saying like, hey, do you mind, modding for me this week, or do you mind like keeping an eye on the social channels? I kind of need to just step back a little bit. Or, are there people that need to cover taking time off? Like we need to get good about asking about the things that we need. And again, like sometimes that's planning. If it's just you, how much help are you gonna get? Like, I'm having a really rough year. This is really hard. Can we plan for there being some supports in place next year? Can we have somebody else who's part of the team, or somebody that's trained? So if I need to step back for a week, I can.
Yeah, I think, in coming back to on campus, everything has been, it's interesting. And I know that we're all experiencing different situations right now, depending on where you're placed, but it really depends on your admin when you go to them. Like, are they truly supportive of you? And are they willing to help you? Because I know, and this is not true for my school, but I know at other schools, like, you could go to your admin and say, I'm burnt out, I don't want to be here anymore. And they'd say,
that's nice.
I'm sorry you're having a tough day.
Yeah.
But you have class in 5 minutes. Like, and we have no subs because it's COVID. So good luck to you. Like, so I think it really depends what kind of relationship you have with your admin. I think it's always important to say how you feel before it gets to the point where you just quit. Yeah.
And I think if you don't have good admins, because I had rough situations, it was like, well, think of what it's doing to the children if you have to have a sub. Like,
right.
Great. Okay. I think you need to have your triage kit in place for, if you're in that situation. Because to be honest, a lot of educators are in that situation where the admin doesn't have their backs. And even if they do, we're in a really weird time period right now where they can't necessarily do anything about it. Like you said, there's sub shortages like nationally. So what can you do? Are there people that you can hop in a game with and just play? Or is there somebody you can hop in a video call and just rant? Who is going to listen to you spew profanity at them for an hour and just be like, yeah, oof, gosh, because sometimes we just need to get it all off, like, and then we're okay. Like, so who are those people that will be your void that you can just scream into? And then what are the activities that do you need to invest in? A treadmill? I know for me, that's a big one. If that's starting to build up, it's hopping on a treadmill and walking or jogging it out. Being really careful about what music I listen to or what TV shows I watch, like being aware of my frame of mind and making sure when I'm feeding it is helping it and not encouraging it to sink any lower. So yeah, like, and then, like you said, with your setting your hours, setting your boundaries, making that time that you have that's yours, your time, and realizing that some weekends that means you're going to be on a couch with Netflix,
eating a napkin for dinner,
and that's okay. Like, that's okay.
I think, like what you were saying, Carrie, when you're talking to admin, I think it's important for you to know what you need and for you to take the time to figure that out or brainstorm and reflect and say like, okay, here's how I'm feeling. What is going to make me feel better like right now? What's going to make me better in the long term? And approaching your admin with a solution. I think especially now, this year more than ever, admin are getting thrown so many different things, and there's so many different issues that they're having to figure out on the fly that they maybe can't come up with a solution for you. So you only know what you need. And I think just understanding that the world is not going to end if you are gone for a day on a mental health break. I
Yep.
know as a teacher, we feel that like if I take a sub day, the whole class is going to burn down and the kids are going to be so behind and whoa, my lesson is going to be off pace and blah blah blah. And it's not true. The kids are okay, they'll make it. And the same with your gaming programs. Like, again, being transparent with your kids. I've said to my like leaders of my club before, at the end of the day before our club, I've gone to them and said, I am just so tired, I can't do it this week. I love you guys. You're welcome to sit outside of my classroom and play Smash, and I'll give you the switches to use. But we're not going to run this week in the capacity that we normally do because I just need a break. And the wonderful thing about teenagers right now is they're like, okay, like they get it. They get it.
Well, and I think it's modeling wellness.
Yeah.
Like, I know in my class, I did that. If I was having a week where I was off, it was talked about. And, having those conversations about what you're doing and what boundaries you're setting because you're not okay in the moment, or you are stretched really thin, and sometimes it was just that, like, hey guys, I'm here, I'm okay. But that patience that I normally have, I don't have that right now. Like right now, I am butter spread too thin across toast and I can't help that. Like I need to recharge. So my classroom's going to be shut at lunch. I love you all, but like I have to set up some boundaries because I'm not okay. And know that when you guys are in that space, if you come and tell me, then I know and I can help accommodate you. And, I think that can be helpful because like, I know I had kids that would eventually come in and be like, hey, I'm having one of those weeks where it's just really hard and I'm really struggling. It's like, okay, so we're going to like, I'm not going to call on you this week. Do you need a couple extra days in your homework? Do you want to sit someplace where it's quieter? Maybe I'm going to let you sit on the patio and you can do your work out there. Like when you start to have the conversations and you start to prioritize wellness and make that transparent and talk about it, then it becomes more comfortable for your kids to also have those conversations, own their own health and talk about it. Because like as adults, like, how many times does somebody ask you how you are and you're like, I'm okay, and you're not, and you're not. But how dare we just acknowledge it? Like, yeah, no, I'm having a rough one today. Like,
So before we get to final thoughts, because we are kind of nearing the end of our time here tonight, one question that not so much a question, but I think one thing that I have really struggled with, especially when it comes to the burnout, when it comes to the esports never sleeping, I personally, and I'm curious if you guys maybe have similar feelings, but I also kind of feel this weight of, I am a female in this space. I am a female in a male-dominated space. If I do take the time to be vulnerable and say that things are rough, how is that going to be perceived? Like, we all want to be somebody that people can look to and be like, okay, this is a safe space. They're in here. They're doing it. I can too. So it's, do you also kind of feel that extra layer of, I just need to push through, I just need to do this so I can like be the best that I can be?
I've stopped. I feel like I did, and I feel like that, especially coming from just teaching, that's the mode you're under. And then being a woman in any of the gaming spaces, I think you have that. It's not working. It's not working. Our athletes burn out, streamers burn out, like every other content creation type burns out. Like when we have that kind of mentality of like, I'm fine, we're just going to push through it. It just doesn't, like, people aren't fine. Like we see it in suicide rates. We see it in people quitting. We see it in people injuring themselves. It's not working. And so I think actively owning that and saying like, no, we need to start putting our health first. Yeah, you're going to get kickback. And yes, people are going to say it's because you're female. Like, I know we've probably all been on the receiving end of comments like that. We know that the gaming community is, toughen up, go with thick skin. If you can't handle it, get out of here. Like, there's a lot of the adages that we're used to hearing. But I think we need to just stop and ignore it and be like, hey, like the way we've been doing it, it's not healthy. It's not working. So let's try it different ways. And if that way isn't for you, then by all means, go ahead and carry on, continue what you're doing. But for those people who it resonates with, they've got somebody that they know they can turn to, and somebody they can be honest with, and somebody that they can look at and be like, okay, this is how they're setting their boundaries. And I think that's immensely positive, because I can guarantee you 100% it's not just the female identifying gamers that are going through this. It's not just the female identifying teachers. It's men too. Unfortunately, they're often put in a hole where they can't express that as easily as it is for us to. So, in some ways we're fighting for them. Like,
yeah, I definitely feel that for sure as like the female lead of my program. I mean, this year I've already heard stop being dramatic once before. And like, it's not that bad. Like, this year is not that bad. And then yesterday, one of my coworkers said, well, this is what you signed up for. And I was like, well, no, it's not what I signed up for. But I think I struggle a lot with that, like the dismissal, and there's like no acknowledgement of, life is hard and we're tired. Like, as teachers, we're all tired. And if you say that you're not tired, you're lying. Yeah. Like, you're lying. And if you're telling me that this year is not harder than most, or all, or ever, you're lying. Like, there's just no way. And, I feel like as a woman, you get we're dramatic and you're overreacting and you're so sensitive and you're so emotional, and like, you should this is just what it's like, and you have to toughen up and you have to, deal with it. And that kind of like male dominated energy comes through, where it's like, you can't show emotion and you're not allowed to be tired. But yeah, I feel like this year really has made me over it, where I'm just like, no, like, I'm tired and that's okay. And just because you work 12,000 hours a day and have no other life outside of here, that doesn't make it okay. Like, that's not how it's supposed to be. And like Carrie said, I feel like we just have to like normalize it and fight back. But it definitely adds extra pressure for sure.
Yeah, I can tell you half the people who like my self-care breakfast posts are men. Right there with you.
A very scientific study.
They also want to eat the cake for breakfast.
You also want cake for breakfast. I feel you. Yes.
All right, very cool. So we are about 5 or so minutes away from our time here today. So we should go ahead and kick it off to some final thoughts. I think for myself, this was quite therapeutic. It is something, especially since I have, it's been interesting for me specifically being on one side of the collegiate house, as in running my own program, to now I'm helping other schools build their own programs. I'm helping them support them with resources. I think my final thoughts for tonight is what I'm seeing when I'm speaking to a lot of other schools that are really kind of exploring the idea of bringing collegiate esports onto their campuses. I've been much more cognizant about the questions that I ask them, because at the end of the day, I feel like it's definitely my job to be able to get these programs the support that they need, but to also make sure that they are getting the support that they need from their institution. And I'm being more and more pleasantly surprised, where I ask them, what are your thoughts for your space? What are your thoughts for staffing moving forward? And I've been pleasantly surprised that I've heard, well, in year 1 we're gonna have one person, but year 2 we plan on bringing an assistant coach in. Year 3 we plan on moving into a larger space. So I think that it's changing. I think that we're getting to a point where we're we're now catching up with, oh yeah, this is not sustainable. We've got so many folks that are leaving the collegiate esports space because it isn't sustainable. So I think that a lot of the new programs that are coming into the space are seeing that, they're hearing that from other schools that they may be talking to. So I have hope for the future just with those conversations alone. But I think my other kind of final thought is, I think everybody here has come up with great suggestions on how to create those boundaries, how to enforce those. And I think you just do need to find those people that you can yell into them as a void when you need to. But also find your chocolate cake.
Yeah.
Very important.
It's the
Find your chocolate
theme of
cake.
tonight. The new
Yes.
title.
Yes.
Esports EDU chat. How to find your chocolate
Chocolate cake.
Carrie, final thoughts.
Yeah, mine is like take a second and create your triage plan. Because I think for a lot of us, by the time we're in the thick of it, it can be really hard to pull ourselves out of it. But I know, at least for myself, when I'm starting to approach that kind of burnout or exhaustion phase, because like even at the studio, like we do game development and game design, and we go through periods where you are crunching and there is burnout. So what identifying what the signs are for you so you can recognize them early, and then creating that plan. So like for me, I have really strong emotional reactions to the music that I listen to. So if I'm in a low space, or I'm worn down or tired with work, I completely change my playlist. Like I have a playlist that doesn't have anything on it that pulls like from my emotional reserves. Like it's not sending me down. I find music that is invigorating or uplifting, like stuff that brings me up. So I've got playlists specifically for it, and I'm hardcore about that. Like I won't, like, not touching anything else. This is what I'm listening to. Same thing with what I watch, and what I'm consuming on Amazon or Netflix. Making sure that does the same thing. Like, so I'm only watching comedies or action movies. Like I'm making sure that I'm lifting my headspace and not bringing it down. I like to stay home. I'm a massive homebody, but I acknowledge that I feel better and my outlook improves when I'm outside. And so, what are these few places I can go to, especially during COVID, that are still safe to go to, that I can be like, I don't want to leave, but I'm gonna spend 30 minutes outside in this space, and that, because I know, even though I don't want to go, I know that once I'm done, it's going to help. Same thing with physical activities. What are the things that you can do that you feel better afterwards? Because you get that, that dopamine release from exercise. Like, is it just walking? Great, then it's just walking. But start creating that list of things and then do them. Even if you don't want to, because you know that when you're done, you're going to feel a little bit better. Whether it's, to-do lists, like what are the things that help you stay organized, that help you stay on top of the water, that help you, get back some of the energy that you're losing, so that you can start taking care of yourself better and realize, like, yeah, maybe I do need to take a day. Maybe I just need to make sure that I'm walking outside for 30 minutes every day, and I'm starting my day with water instead of, coffee, or, what are the things that are just going to help to get you through and keep you balanced?
Yeah, building off of that, I think it's important to do one thing that you enjoy every day that's not part of your career.
Yeah. Yes.
And sometimes we get so overwhelmed, especially when we're feeling burnt out. We feel like I have so much to do. I need to just like grind and work all day in order to be done, and then I'll be caught up. And in the long run, that only makes it worse, because I think in teaching and in esports, your work is never done. You're never going to be caught up. So it doesn't make a difference if you're taking an hour of your day to do something that truly brings you joy. Again, the world is not going to collapse if you take a day off to go outside, or to eat chocolate cake, or to read a book, or to learn how to crochet or to paint or whatever it is that takes you out of that space that you're feeling frustrated in, because that in and of itself is going to be healing and that's going to make you feel better. It's in like astronomically better. I know for me, when I'm struggling, I make it a point to have my phone shut off notifications, like you said,
Yep.
Carrie. Like my notifications are off by 7 p.m. I delete my work email off my phone and I have an alarm that goes off. And when the alarm goes off, I'm like drinking tea, reading a book, journaling, like whatever, right? Whatever you need to do. So I think really just taking time each day to do one thing you enjoy is going to combat burnout in a small way, but over time I think it just shows you that you don't have to feel overwhelmed all the time to get what you need done. You're only as good of a teacher or as good of an educator or as good as an esports leader as how you feel as a human. So my times where I'm most burnt out and I'm most stressed out, that's when I'm a crappier teacher. But the time when I'm taking those breaks to do things for myself, that's when I become the good teacher that the students love to be around.
Love those final thoughts. Well, thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Angelique, for joining us tonight. Again, I very much enjoyed this topic. It was one that I pushed for and wanted to get on, so I'm happy we were able to do it. For those of you that are watching, thank you also for joining in on the conversation. You can follow us on Twitter at esportsedu chat. That's where we're going to be posting our next upcoming topic for next week, but it's always going to be Wednesdays at 8:30 Eastern time. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us, and we will catch you next week. Take care.